You talk to yourself. Maybe you do it quietly, under your breath while you're grocery shopping. Maybe you do it out loud when you're alone in the car. Maybe you've caught yourself mid-sentence in a public bathroom and gone completely silent the second you heard someone walk in. And for years, you've wondered if that means something is wrong with you. Here's what nobody ever tells you. Talking to yourself isn't a quirk. It isn't a coping mechanism for the lonely or the odd. It is one of the most sophisticated cognitive tools the human brain has ever developed. And by the end of this, you'll understand something about the way your mind works that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. Picture this. It's a Tuesday evening. You're standing in your kitchen, and you've just had one of those days. The kind where everything felt slightly off, slightly too much. You're making dinner alone, and without even realizing it, you start talking. Okay, where did I put the olive oil? And then, 5 minutes later, you're telling yourself, out loud, exactly what happened at work today, replaying it like a podcast only you can hear. And here's what nobody tells you about that feeling, about that quiet, automatic act of narrating your own life. It isn't loneliness. It isn't instability. It's your brain doing something extraordinary, something most people don't even know has a name. It's called private speech, and the science behind it is genuinely fascinating. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A study published in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology found that talking to yourself, specifically saying the name of an object out loud while searching for it, significantly improves your ability to find it. Translation: your brain processes language and vision in linked systems, and activating one sharpens the other. You're not rambling, you're focusing, but that's just the surface. A study from the journal Acta Psychologica found that self-directed speech helps regulate emotional processing, that when people verbalize their internal experience, it reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and emotional reactivity. Translation: when you talk yourself through something, you're not being dramatic. You are literally calming your own nervous system. You are your own emotional regulator. And this isn't a small effect. This is measurable. This is neuroscience. The voice in your head, or out loud, in your car, in your kitchen, is doing the work that most people desperately outsource to other people, to alcohol, to scrolling. Your brain found a more elegant solution. It just never got credit for it. But where does it come from? Because you weren't always like this, and this is where it gets personal. When you were small, maybe 5, maybe 7 years old, you used to think out loud constantly. All children do. Developmental psychologists call it egocentric speech, and it was first studied by the Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky in the early 20th century. He observed that children narrate their own actions as they do them. I'm putting the block here. Now I'm making a tower. It's how young brains learn to organize the world. By the time you were around 8 or 9, something shifted. The adults around you, teachers, maybe a parent, maybe another kid on the playground, made it clear that talking to yourself was strange, embarrassing, a little weird. So you did what every child does when they want to belong. You took that voice and you pushed it inward. You internalized it. You made it private. But for some of you, the ones watching this right now, that voice never went quiet. It adapted. It found new moments, the drive to school, the walk home, the shower, the room you shared with no one. It followed you into adulthood, into your 20s, into right now. And you never stopped to think about why you were one of the people who kept it. But wait, there's a darker side to this, because here's the paradox. The same mechanism that makes you cognitively sharper, emotionally steadier, more self-aware, that same voice, it can turn on you. When your self-talk is critical, when the monologue shifts from, okay, let's figure this out, to, why do you always do this? You're such an idiot. The amygdala response reverses. Instead of calming your nervous system, Harsh, self-directed speech activates the same stress pathways as an external threat. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between someone attacking you and you attacking yourself. The cortisol spike is real either way, and this explains why you can be both extraordinarily self-aware and utterly exhausted by your own mind. Why you can coach yourself through a crisis with the clarity of a therapist, and then, an hour later, spiral into a loop of self-criticism that feels impossible to escape. You have a powerful internal tool, but no one ever taught you how to aim it. The people who talk to themselves are often some of the most emotionally intelligent people in any room. They are also, frequently, the most unforgiving of themselves. The two things are not unrelated, and this explains everything about your relationships. Think about how you process conflict. When something happens, a difficult conversation, a misunderstanding, an argument, you don't just move on. You replay it. You narrate it. You argue both sides in the shower at 11 p.m. You figure out what you should have said. You understand the other person's perspective more deeply than they probably understood themselves. While everyone else seems to let things go, you are in there, working, reconstructing, making meaning. Society calls this overthinking, anxiety, rumination. The word used most often is too sensitive, and for years, you may have believed them. You may have apologized for the depth of your own processing. You may have tried to be more like the people who seem to move through life lighter, unbothered, not narrating everything. But here's the thing. Those people aren't processing more efficiently. They're processing less. The research consistently shows that verbal self-reflection, when it isn't purely self-critical, is associated with higher emotional intelligence, greater problem-solving ability, and more nuanced decision-making. You aren't broken for thinking deeply. You were just handed a tool and never given the manual. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds reframes everything. The truth is, talking to yourself isn't a sign of loneliness. It isn't a symptom of instability. It is the brain's most ancient technology, predating writing, predating language itself as a social tool. Before humans had someone to talk to, they talked to themselves. They processed out loud. They narrated the hunt, the fear, the plan. The inner voice isn't a malfunction of the social brain. It is the original version of it. And that changes everything. Because if this is ancient, if this is built in, if this is how the most self-aware minds have always worked, then the question was never, what is wrong with me? The question was always, what do I do with this? You aren't strange for having a running internal monologue. You aren't odd for muttering to yourself in the car or debriefing your own day like a correspondent filing a report. You are someone whose inner world is loud and alive and working all the time, even when you're tired, even when you wish it would quiet down for just one night. And maybe, just maybe, the thing you were most embarrassed about is the thing that has carried you further than you realize. The resilience you built by talking yourself through hard moments, the clarity you found by narrating your way to a decision, the empathy you developed by arguing both sides of every argument, alone, in the dark. That voice kept you company when no one else did. It helped you survive things you've never told anyone about. It is, in the most literal sense, the most loyal relationship of your life. So the next time you catch yourself mid-sentence in a parking lot, don't go quiet. Let yourself finish the thought. If this resonated with something you've never quite been able to explain about yourself, you'll want to watch the next video on why highly self-aware people struggle most with peace. Because the same mind that understands everything often finds it hardest to simply rest.